Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're basically acting as planetary doctors. We're going to diagnose the health of our world using the incredibly dense, data-heavy State of India's Environment 2026 report. If you're preparing for your exams right now and you need a high-yield study guide, specifically for GS papers 3 and 4, you are definitely in the right place. We're going to cut through the noise, look at the hard data together, and visually map out these really complex systems. To kick things off, I want you to picture something for a second. What if the Earth was a literal patient arriving at a hospital for a critical medical checkup? Instead of checking blood pressure or a heart rate, scientists are the doctors, and they're measuring the Earth's ecological pulse. They look at systemic Earth processes to see if our planet is actually stable enough to continue supporting human life. Well, the test results are back, and honestly, the diagnosis is alarming. Out of the 9 vital planetary boundaries that keep our world stable, 7 have now been dangerously breached. We aren't just approaching the edge here. For the vast majority of our planet's life support systems, we have fundamentally crossed the line. To understand how we actually got to this point, we have to talk about the Anthropocene. See, for the last 10,000 years, humanity thrived in the Holocene. It was this highly stable, really safe era. But human-induced ecological stress has forcefully evicted the Earth from that stable equilibrium. We're now living in the Anthropocene, a volatile, highly unpredictable epoch, where our actions are completely overriding the forces of nature. Okay, here is our roadmap for today. 1. The planetary health check. 2. Crossing the 9 boundaries. 3. Real-life ecological cascades. 4. The reactive governance myth. And 5. Structural reforms and policies. Let's dive in. Section 1. The planetary health check. Look at this matrix. It essentially maps our current situation based on the Stockholm Resilience Center's framework, and it makes for an incredible cheat sheet. Interestingly, atmospheric aerosols and stratospheric ozone depletion are currently marked as safe. That is actual proof that global governance, like the Montreal Protocol, can totally work. But everything else is deeply in the red. Critical life support systems, everything from freshwater to biosphere integrity, are officially breached. Section 2. Crossing the 9 boundaries. Let's zoom in on the newest boundary we've crossed, ocean acidification. I know it sounds a bit abstract, but the chemistry is literally a direct chain reaction. As human carbon emissions dissolve into the ocean, they react with the water to form carbonic acid. This acid then releases excess hydrogen ions, which aggressively deplete the ocean's carbonate ions. Why does that matter? Because marine organisms desperately need those carbonate ions to build their shells. So, we are quite literally turning our oceans sour. Now, you might be asking, what's the real-world impact here? Well, if plankton, which forms the absolute baseline of the marine food web, cannot form its shells, it dies. That decline rips right through the food chain, disrupting the life cycles of commercial fish like sardines and mackerel. And that directly threatens the nutritional security and the daily livelihoods of over 4 million coastal fishermen across India's massive coastline. The chemistry suddenly turns into an economic crisis. And the crisis definitely isn't limited to the oceans. 331, let that number sink in. In the year 2025, India experienced extreme weather anomalies on 331 out of 334 recorded days. We are talking about roughly 99% of the years spent in a near-constant state of climate crisis. Heat waves, cloudbursts, unseasonal cyclones. This level of volatility led to over 4,400 documented deaths and destroyed millions of hectares of crops. Then we have what the report specifically calls the regulatory illusion. India bears over 25% of global air pollution-related deaths. Yet look at this. A massive 88% of our urban centers completely lack real-time air quality monitoring. Only 12% actually track this data. We are literally fighting a massive public health emergency while flying completely blind. Section 3. Real-life ecological cascades. This right here is a fascinating yet completely tragic ecological cascade. It's like a set of falling dominoes. It starts with an exotic invasive weed called Lantana camara, which now covers nearly half of India's forests. As this weed invades, it aggressively chokes out the native grasses. Without that grass, herbivore populations like chital and sambar just plummet. Left without their natural prey, large carnivores like tigers are forced out of protected areas to hunt livestock. So a simple weed directly leads to a violent escalation in human-tiger conflict. Section 4. The reactive governance myth. All right, if you're making notes for GS Paper 4, you absolutely want to bullet point these specific institutional gaps in our environmental governance. First bullet point, ex post facto approvals. This basically grants retrospective clearance to major infrastructure projects. It's essentially like asking for permission after you've already crashed the car, which completely violates the precautionary principle. Second bullet point, the Campa fallacy. This is the dangerous assumption that a simple plantation can replace a complex, ancient forest. And the third bullet point, fragmented enforcement. State pollution control boards are operating with severe staff and funding shortages, making them incredibly weak and reactive.
Which brings us to a core philosophical flaw we need to understand: reactive compensation versus proactive ecological regeneration. We constantly operate under this myth that we can just plant a few fast-growing eucalyptus trees to magically replace a complex forest destroyed by mining. But natural biomes cannot just be photocopied. When we do that, we lose the carbon storage and we lose the biodiversity. We absolutely must shift our mindset toward protecting intact biomes and building real systemic resilience.
Section 5, Structural Reforms and Policies. So, how do we actually build that systemic resilience? Let's bullet out your high-yield policy takeaways for the way forward. Bullet point 1. Parliament needs the legal recognition of planetary boundaries in statutory law. We have to move beyond just tweaking emission standards to capping our total ecological capacity. Bullet point 2. We need decentralized, low-cost air quality networks to cover that massive 88% blind spot in rural and semi-urban areas. Bullet point 3. A massive national mission for bioshielding and invasive eradication. And the final bullet point, we need to start regulating ocean acidification by establishing robust, strictly enforced marine protected areas. I want to leave you with this really powerful thought straight from the report's conclusion. A bad environment can never sustain a good economy. As India looks toward its goals for 2047, it's clear we just cannot replicate the high emission pathways of the past. So the question is, are we actually willing to prioritize systemic ecological resilience, or will we just keep treating our planetary patient with temporary band-aids? Keep that in mind as you review your notes. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.